Hey, campfire crew, let's get it on. Not Taking Any Chances, submitted by Tana. When I was in high school in 2019, my friends and I decided to take our 4th of July party to the woods behind our friend Garrick's grandparents' house. They were out of town and we were all 21, so no one had an issue with it as long as no one went into the house. We had no plans for that. We were going to camp out about a mile behind it. The property butted up against the Newberry State Land area, so there was a whole lot of nothing out there. There were 10 of us total. Most of the guys brought their girlfriends. It was going to be nothing but fun during the day and then fireworks at night. We all brought tents, coolers of beer and wine, and food, and rode quads back through the trees to the edge of the bigger forest. We'd all met up around 10 a.m. at the grandparents' place and unloaded our quads and got everything ready to go. Everyone was laughing and excited to spend the day swimming and fishing at a pond near our camp, and then cook up some steaks before the fireworks. By noon, all the tents and a couple of pop-up shelters were set up and a huge bonfire pit was constructed. Some of us gathered up a bunch of deadfall trees for the fire, and Garrick and Pete went back to the house to grab some old pallets his grandfather said we could burn for the bonfire. The beer started flowing, and the day was bright and hot. It was just perfect. People were in and out of the pond all afternoon, and everyone was having a good time. Rick went off to build a privy for everyone, and I have to say, he made the best thing I'd ever seen as far as a backwoods camping privy goes. He was the Eagle Scout, and he had split a log in half and then lashed it to heavy branches in the shape of a V that sat off the ground with a hole underneath it. He dug up a big pile of dirt next to it so people could use the privy and then bury their stuff with the dirt. It was a really good system. No, that's not scary, but I'm sharing that because a little while after it was done, one of the ladies went to use it and came back laughing and saying Rick not only had big feet, but was gross for building the thing in his bare feet. We all laughed for a minute before Rick said, "What are you talking about? I haven't taken my boots off all day." Cheryl stopped laughing and said, "Well, there's a lot of giant footprints back there." I was also laughing and then stopped. I said, "What?" And she said, "Well, just come and see." Garrick, Rick, Chris, and I followed her to the privy, and she wasn't lying. There were giant footprints all around the privy and in the pile of dirt Rick had dug up. Garrick was quick to say, "They just look like footprints, but those are boot prints sure enough. See?" Then he made a print in the pile of dirt with his own foot, and it sort of looked like the others, but not exactly. We were all silent for a minute. Sure, we had all heard stories about Bigfoot and stuff, but we all knew it was bullshit. All of us were hunters and were out in the woods all year long. There were plenty of big animals out there. But as for a giant hairy ape, no fucking way. Still, I looked at Rick and Chris and raised my eyebrows. In the end, we just agreed with Garrick and went back to the others for more beer and fun. Around dinner time, we got out the steaks and other grub, and while everyone kept swimming, Renee and Stacy helped Chris and Paul cook up everything. After dinner, we all went for a dip listening to Fish and Humphreys McGee on a speaker sound system as a few of us had passed a bong of what Mother Nature makes best. The sun was getting low, and we all went back to get out the fireworks and prepare for the show as soon as it got dark. The tunes were playing, and the guys were arguing about some movie plot, and the girls were talking about whatever they were involved with. Darkness fell, the fireworks were ready to light up the night, and those not lighting off stuff settled back in chairs to watch a couple of $100 worth of explosives. The fireworks illuminated the forest edge in our clearing, and the loud reports shook the ground. After about 15 minutes, we stopped and everyone whooped it up and kept drinking and played drinking games around our camp lanterns. Renee had to use the privy, and her guy Paul told her that he'd go with her and stand at a respectable distance, as she said the woods were now a little scary to her. They were gone for a few minutes and came back with Renee running once he came out of the trees. "Someone's back there," she yelled. Paul came up with wide eyes, and when I asked what the hell she was talking about, Paul said someone was banging something against some of the trees farther into the woods. "There's no one else out here," said Garrick. "It's probably just some deer moving through the woods." But my mind was on the footprints, and in my mind, probably affected by the weed and beer, began to wander. "Forget it," said Chris, and we all just got back to partying. Finally, we were all starting to wrap things up, and the pallets long since burned down, and most of us decided to hit the sack. People were getting into their tents, and Garrick, his girl Julie, and me and my lady Erica sat around the fire having one last beer. We were laughing at some story Erica was telling and messing up, hence the laughs, when Garrick went quiet. His gaze was stuck at the trees, maybe 20 yards away. I kicked his foot, and he just looked at me and then back to the trees. I leaned over and whispered, "What's up?" He whispered back, "I thought I saw someone standing over there. I must be tired and a little drunk." But once again, I was uneasy. We ended the merriment and headed for our tents, and Erica and I fooled around for a while and then fell asleep. Then, about an hour later, we heard the loudest howl I had ever heard in my life. It woke everyone up. I looked at my watch, and it was 2:12 in the morning. More than one of the other guys yelled out, "What the fuck was that?" And another howl came, louder and longer than the first. I mean, it sounded like it was right in the middle of our party. Then we heard loud knocking, like a big branch was being smashed against a tree. Shit, that's what we heard earlier. I told you guys someone was out there. I crawled out of our tent, as did the other guys, and we all jumped when another howl filled the air. "Holy shit, what is that?" yelled Paul, and pointed into the darkness to the even darker tree line. Something was there. It was huge. It looked like a giant man standing there, and none of us moved. I went for a lantern, and Garrick said, "No lights. Don't let him know we're here." I mean, like it couldn't see us. I mean, we could see it. Why wouldn't it see us? But suddenly, there was another howl behind us and the sound of loud, heavy footsteps that seemed to make the ground shake. We all spun around and saw another giant figure run along the edge of our camping spot and then crash into the trees a few yards away from the other figure that remained motionless. We were all shit scared and started yelling and scrambling around for stuff to arm ourselves with. I had a shotgun in my tent and went for it when there was another howl and Rick yelled, "It's coming back!" More thunderous footsteps, and something once again tore past us a second time. Garrick said, "Do we have any fireworks left over?" We had a bunch of bottle rockets and smaller stuff, but we grabbed them. The girls were all screaming at this point, and the guys were yelling, and we began to fill the night with loud bangs and pops. I got my shotgun, and after the barrage, everything was dead silent. No crickets, no birds, no bullfrogs from the pond. Just dead silence. The figures we had seen were no longer near the edge of the woods, and we decided to stay up around the fire for the rest of the night and then hightail it out of there at first light. We talked about heading back in the dark, but none of us were sober, and we didn't want to risk an accident on the quads. The girls came out of the tents and wanted to be around us, so we sat around the glowing embers of the fire, once in a while throwing a log in for bigger flames, and hoping that the fireworks and the fire would keep whatever or whoever was out there away from us. Some of us drifted off to sleep, and around 4:30, before first light was about to break, we were all jolted awake by Rick yelling, "Get the fuck out of here!" He'd grabbed a fire extinguisher and was spraying it all over the air next to one of our tents. There was another howl and loud footsteps running away. That was it. Garrick told everyone to grab whatever gear they could and that we were getting the hell out of there. We didn't need any encouragement. We got on our quads and quickly but safely went back to the grandparents' place. We'd said we weren't going inside, but this was a whole different ball of wax now. Everyone got in, we locked the doors, and collapsed on furniture and the floor in the living room. Everyone was out of breath and totally wigged out. Finally, we all fell asleep until later that morning. When we woke up, the girls stayed at the house and we went back to get our gear and make sure the fire was out. I know, we shouldn't have left it, but there were extenuating circumstances, as you can obviously tell. We cleaned up, and lo and behold, in the dust the fire extinguisher had left behind were massive footprints. I put my size 12.5 next to one and was dwarfed by the bigger print of a naked soul. Rick took pictures, but I don't know if he still has them. Once everything was back to like it had before when we got there, we gathered up the girls, loaded our trucks, and headed for town for some breakfast, all talking about what had happened. I mentioned towards the beginning of my story that I always thought Bigfoot stories were bullshit. Now, I know better. We've been back to that land more than once since this happened, but we haven't seen or experienced anything like what we did that night. When we told Garrick's grandfather, he didn't believe a word of it, even after seeing the pictures of the footprints. To his dying day, he said we were just screwing around, and there was nothing out there other than the forest animals. Well, we know better. Worst 4th of July in my life, submitted by Derek L. I wasn't sure if this applied to crazy exes or 4th of July, but it is almost the 4th, and this happened at that point in time, so I guess that's what it'll be. I screwed up. I admit that. I married way too young. When I was in college, not too many moons ago, I fell in love with a townie girl who worked at a bar I hung out at. She was a bartender, hot as all get out, and honestly, she was super sweet and just very nice. For the story, I'll call her Sandy. I was 21 at the time, and I'm now in my 30s, so this started in 2010. I was surprised I even got the time of day from her, as she was constantly being hit on by every guy who walked through the door, and I was just another face in the crowd wanting a beer or whatever whenever I saw her. But one day, I was at the local grocery store and I bumped into her. Literally. We were both getting some kind of produce, and we recognized one another, and I just started some dumb conversation, and she laughed and responded. We got to chatting, and after a minute, she said it was nice to have a conversation with someone from the university that wasn't about her hurrying with a drink. Sandy was a lifelong resident of the town. Her family still lived there, and she worked for her father's small company during the day and just bartended for extra money at night. She was sweet, down home, and totally hot. Did I mention that? On a whim, I asked her if she would meet me sometime for coffee at this little shop in town. This was a rural school, guys, just a town square with a bunch of businesses around the school, 6 or 7 bars and restaurants, and not much else. It was an hour drive to the biggest city. To my surprise, she said sure, and we exchanged numbers. This was in early spring, and there was only a month of school left. I was a junior and had just scored an internship at my uni, so I was going to spend the summer in town with the majority of the students going home. I had been living with some friends in a big house up until that point, but was going to get my own apartment for the summer and my senior year. I love my friends, but I wanted my space. The problem was, I couldn't find an apartment. To speed some things up, I met with Sandy the next weekend and we really hit it off. Through our conversation, my housing issue came up, and she said her father owned a few properties, including a small cottage on the edge of town that was going to be vacant at the end of April. She said she'd ask if it would be available for me. The next day, I met her father, a really great guy back then and to this day. We met at the cottage, and he said I could have the place for the next year on a lease, and the rent was more than reasonable. I was so psyched. A paid internship. I was also going to work part-time as a bar back at another bar in town on the weekends. I found a cool place to live, and I was thinking a relationship with this total fox was in my grasp. In fact, the latter was in my cards. Sandy and I started seeing each other more and more before the end of school, and by the time summer came around, we were an item, much to the shock of my friends that I was dating a townie. I'm going to fast forward again. The summer came and went, as did my senior year. Sandy was my girl. I was graduating and took a job offer that extended from my internship. So I renewed my lease, and I thought life was beginning. Things went on, and before I knew it, Sandy and I were talking marriage. We got married when we were both 22, and life was good. The wedding was great, all of our friends were there, and I made a lot of new friends, too. People from the town were awesome. I had a golf foursome with her father, brother, and a guy who lived up the road from me I'd gotten close with. Sandy and I were pretty careful, but the following year, she got pregnant. She was overjoyed, but then a curious thing happened. Her mom, who was a little overbearing to begin with, suddenly became nearly unbearable. She was constantly at the house we were renting. I had left my cottage when we got married, and I noticed that Sandy took a lot of cues from her. New furniture had to be run by Mom. Painting or decorating the house, Mom had input. And she was constantly dropping by, like all the time. I chalked it up to, well, that's what marriage brings, but it was still annoying. So, 9 months later came my beautiful daughter Melinda. Mindy, really. She was everything to us, and I was thrilled to be a dad. But then Sandy changed. I think at first it was postpartum depression. Not I think, I knew it was. She became distant, and I did everything I could to make her comfortable. I switched my work hours, spent more time with my little girl to give her a break, and she remained depressed for over a year. And then the booze came. Sandy wanted to start working at the bar again, and I thought that would be a good thing. I was happy to stay home with my kiddo, work on my writing projects, as I was now writing a lot of pieces as a freelancer, and bringing in some decent cash on top of my job salary. My mother-in-law was a great help too at first, but then she also seemed to change. Her overbearing masked as love turned dark. She would complain about watching our daughter after offering to do it. She would yell at me that I wasn't making enough money, that I was wasting time on, as she called it, getting on the fast track for a college boy. Things were not going great. And then one Friday night, Saturday morning really, Sandy didn't come home from the bar. I texted, no response. I called, and it went straight to voicemail. I called her parents, and her mom answered and was mad at me for not working enough that her daughter was back at the bar, despite it being Sandy's choice. I hung up, which only made her madder. I wasn't pissed at Sandy, I was worried. I called her dad, who was working at his office, and he was much nicer and concerned. Mindy was up by now, and I got her fed and was playing with her and her stuffies. 9 a.m. No Sandy. I got Mindy dressed and ready to go for a walk. 10 a.m. No Sandy. Mindy and I went to the park, and father-in-law and I were texting a ton. Mother-in-law was calling to yell at me, and still no Sandy. Mindy took a nap, and finally at 11 a.m., Sandy came home. She came in the back door and just stood in our kitchen, staring at me and looking like hell. I asked her if she was okay, if I could get her anything. Not once did I ask her where she had been or raise my voice. I'm not much of a yeller. She went off. Sandy started screaming at me that I had ruined her life, that I was a piece of shit, that the best thing I could do was kill myself. I could tell she was still hammered, and I said maybe she should sit down and try to settle down. Her response was to throw a chair from our kitchen table at me with a loud "fuck you" that woke Mindy up, so I went to get her. Sandy screamed to stay away from her, and I calmly told her that she was in no shape to get our kid. Bad move. She went even more berserk and picked up a knife from the counter. She immediately put it down, but that one move really freaked me the fuck out. I backed into the living room where Mindy was in her pack-and-play. I picked her up and started to get her to calm down when I heard Sandy going through a cabinet. Her liquor cabinet. Mindy finally settled down, and I changed her and was going to get her a bottle, and Sandy had gone out on our back porch. And I couldn't see her, but I saw a bottle of vodka on the railing of the porch. Then I heard tires coming up our driveway, and oh boy, it was my mother-in-law. I heard them talking, and I looked out the door to see her taking a big pull on the bottle herself. Great, I thought, 2 drunks, and I'm here holding my baby. After a while, everything quieted down, and I heard the car drive away. Sandy came in crying her eyes out and collapsed at my feet as I sat on the couch holding Mindy. She was apologizing and saying she was just so stressed out and that she was sorry, so sorry. I told her she just needed some rest and that I had things under control, but honestly, inside, I was still freaked out. Sandy would not stop apologizing, and I told her to grab a shower and get some sleep and that we would talk about things later. She got up and left, and I didn't see her for the rest of the afternoon. Mindy took another nap, and I got some writing done, even though my nerves were shot. My father-in-law stopped by on his way home and asked if I was okay, and I said, yeah, I think everything's going to be okay. And then he shared that his wife had called him and said I threatened to throw Sandy out and a bunch of other lies and vile crap. I assured him none of that had happened, and he nodded and smiled at me with knowing eyes. He told me to call him for anything, anytime. And then Mindy woke up and her papa held her, making her giggle. He smiled back at her and then said he had to get on home. After I made some dinner, I took Mindy for another walk and then got her ready for bed. She was such a little doll, and she still is. Sandy finally sobered up and came into the living room around 9 o'clock that night. She didn't say a word and just put her head in my lap and cried. I finally asked her where she had been, and she'd gone to a coworker's house, a female friend, which I found out was true. I then asked her if she was concerned about her drinking, and she said yes. That night we agreed to get rid of all the alcohol in the house, and she was just going to stop cold turkey. And that worked for about a month. And slowly but surely, a little here, a little there, she started drinking again. Just a little at first, and she seemed like she could handle it. Things were much better, and I thought life was moving on. We had just suffered a little blip. In fact, years went on. Mother-in-law continued to be a pain in the ass and was making life difficult. I could see she was a bad influence when it came to the booze, and she always brought over boxed wine when she visited, and I began to turn her down when she offered to watch Mindy. That, of course, would start terrible arguments, and Sandy would then start yelling at me, and shit would go downhill. Jesus, this is a Stephen King novel. Guess I need to get this off my chest. Sandy once again started to get violent and began threatening me. She threatened to take away my daughter, and she said she'd tell everyone I was abusing her. And finally, one drunken night, she threatened to kill me. That was it. I was done. We tried counseling for a short bit, and she said she was going to AA, which was a lie. Mindy was now 4. And we had bought a bigger house, and I was doing well at my job despite the craziness. But I knew this was not a situation I wanted me or my daughter to be in. The night she threatened to kill me and passed out, I gathered up Mindy and left Sandy a note and drove through the night to my parents' house. That was not the best of ideas, and I won't go into details, but the cops were called, and while they understood why I left, my note wasn't considered appropriate, so I went back home to a less than happy wife. I immediately filed separation papers with a plan for divorce. Sandy said little, but her mom wouldn't shut the fuck up. I didn't give a shit about her getting half of the house and such. I just wanted my kid to grow up with a somewhat normal life, and I needed a normal life too. During this time, I was commuting from my parents' house an hour away and had Mindy on the weekends. Sandy was under a lot of scrutiny for her actions, but was deemed fit to care for her. And now, the final act. Thanks to everyone who stuck around this long, if you even read this, Uncle Jay. I came home to pick up my little one for the 4th of July weekend, and I had a new toy for her. It was a frozen microphone speaker thing. She was obsessed with that cartoon and loved to sing all the songs. She went crazy with it. Sandy, of course, wanted to go over some divorce stuff, so Mindy was on the porch within my eyesight, singing her heart out. Sandy then said she had to make a phone call and get some of Mindy's things. So she went upstairs, and I went to my daughter and said, "What can you sing for me?" She went into something, and that's when I noticed something odd. I heard something under her voice. Mindy stopped singing for a minute, and I heard the voice clearer, Voices, I should say. He's leaving in a few minutes. Okay. Wait until he's back home. Don't do anything in front of my daughter. Who is that, Daddy? Asked my daughter, and my heart was racing. No one, honey bun. Can you get Daddy a cup of water? Mindy jumped up and went inside. What the hell was I hearing? I was hearing it, and Mindy heard it too. And then I realized what was up. The little microphone speaker thing had a Bluetooth function. It was picking up Sandy talking to someone. Someone not so good. I scrambled to get my phone and opened the voice app and hit record. Obviously I'd missed stuff, but I did get some more on the recorder. What if he doesn't go anywhere? Don't worry, I'll call him to get something. Okay. Just make sure it's quick and make sure it's done. That's it. Okay. I froze. I couldn't move. I didn't know what to do. My daughter came back out and the voices stopped talking. Here, Daddy. Mindy gave me the water and I drank it with a shaking hand. My God, I thought. That actually happened. Shit I saw on TV shows was actually happening to me. A few minutes later, Sandy came out with Mindy's bag like nothing had happened, said to have a safe drive and to text when I got to my parents'. I didn't say anything back and she asked if I was okay, and I just said, yeah, I'm fine. Come on, kiddo. Let's go see Grandma and Pop. I got Mindy into her car seat in my Jeep and I slowly started driving. What the hell was I supposed to do first? I decided to get Mindy to my parents pronto and then get on the horn with the police. And the entire drive home I wanted to call my dad, I wanted to call my best friend, I wanted to call anyone, but I didn't want Mindy to hear anything. I got to my parents' house, got Mindy with my mom, and then pulled my dad into his study, and I told him everything, and then played the recording I had made when he didn't believe what I was saying at first. My parents knew shit was bad between me and Sandy, but not this bad. After we listened to it together, he looked at me and we immediately called the county sheriff where Sandy lived and my house was. They quickly referred me to the state police and they said someone was coming to speak with me. Less than an hour later, a trooper was talking to me and my dad on our front porch and Mom was with my kiddo out back. I got a text from Sandy saying she had forgot to pack Mindy's allergy medicine and that I'd have to go get some. I just finished playing the recording for the trooper. He happened to be a detective in an unmarked SUV, and I need to mention that. He made a bunch of phone calls and then told me to go to a local CVS 20 minutes after he left the house. Just like on TV, they were setting whoever the guy was on the phone with Sandy up. He told me there'd be 2 other vehicles following me as well as him. Now, I don't know about protocols and about how safe this was, so don't take me on in the comments about this. This is just what happened. I was terrified, and I told the cops so. What if something went wrong? What if they couldn't stop this guy from doing what my fucking wife had asked him to do? What if this guy actually killed me? The trooper assured me it wouldn't get anywhere near that, and I would be okay. I hugged my Mindy and told her that I'd be back, and she begged to go with me, but I shakingly told her to stay with her gram. My dad was nervous as hell too, but nodded his approval. I can't tell you guys how shit scared I was at that point. I started driving and didn't even notice what was going on around me. My head was swimming. I could barely keep my eyes on the road. About 5 or 6 minutes later, lights went on behind me and I pulled over. It was the first trooper that I'd been talking to. He got out, came up to my door and said, "We got somebody. You're fine. I'll follow you home." You'd think that I'd have been relieved, but I wasn't. I'll admit, I opened my door and puked on the street. The trooper had to jump back. He said to take it easy, it was over. And then I went home. Okay, wrap-up time. The guy that they had picked up folded faster than Superman on laundry day. They played him the recording, they got a warrant for his phone, and they saw the call from Sandy. He was some guy that hung around her bar, and she had hired him to off me for $5,000. Sandy was arrested, $2 million bond, no contact with me or my daughter, and her stupid mother-in-law started harassing me over the phone and even drove up to my parents to yell at me. Bam! No contact with me or my daughter, and an arrest for a DWI to boot. But you know what? The fear remained. Every minute for years I was looking over my shoulder. I never left Mindy alone unless it was with my parents. No babysitters, no one got near us. It took a while before I'd even let her go to sleepovers at her friend's house. The divorce took over a year with all the other muckety-muck going on, and Sandy was not let out of jail due to the charges and the pending evidence. It was brutal on Mindy. She didn't understand any of it. And I did my best to gently tell her that Mommy had done some bad things. Details, I thought, weren't necessary. Sandy's case took over another year. She got 8 years with 1 year served, and she's been out for a bit and is fighting to see Mindy more, but right now she can only see her on supervised visits. Mindy is now 13 and an awesome kid. She wants nothing to do with her mother, but grudgingly sees her. My new wife, I got married 3 years ago, has been a real mom to my daughter. We've healed as best we can and moved on as we can only do. But every time 4th of July comes around, those memories come back. The fear for my daughter first and foremost, and the fear that I almost lost my life. We live about 15 minutes from my parents now and are enjoying our lives. And my ex-father-in-law? 1 year after my divorce was finalized, he showed up at my house to see his granddaughter. He always came around to see her. She was the apple of his eye. My daughter loves him so much. He told me over a beer that he was divorcing his wife. He was through with her madness and drinking and intimated to me that deep in his heart, he thought the whole plot against me started with her. He didn't have any evidence, that's just what he thought. He lives about 2 hours away but comes to see his whiffet at least twice a month. And the mother-in-law? Well, she keeps fighting for grandparents' rights to see Mindy. But it never works out, and Mindy, for her own reasons, wants nothing to do with her either. So yeah, I just read this back to myself, and I understand if this doesn't fit your podcast. Feels good to get it off my chest, though. Without a doubt, the scariest time of my life. I wouldn't wish what I went through on anyone. 4th of Julys will never be the same for me ever again. God bless you and yours on this holiday, Uncle Jay, and all your listeners. Thanks for indulging me, if you choose to. A Haunted 4th of July by Ella the Amulet. With the 4th of July quickly approaching, I thought I'd share one of my most unexplainable events to date. This took place almost 15 years ago in my old neighborhood in San Bernardino, California. Growing up, I lived in the same house since I was several months old. My house itself was haunted, or at least held a lot of residual energy from previous families living in it. But this story isn't about my house. It's about my friend's house directly across the street from mine. From what I remember, the original house had burned down. I was really young, around 3 or 4 years old, and still remember the charred remains standing for the longest time, but I don't remember the fire, so I'm not sure if it happened before moving in or during the first few years after. And I don't know the details, like if anyone died or anything. But when I was around 5-ish, they demolished the remains and built a new house. Shortly after, a family moved in. The little girl living there became one of my best friends, but I never went over to play because my parents were really strict. Plus, her family were gang members, and even though her parents were good people, my parents didn't want me going over there just in case. They lived there for several years, and my friend never mentioned anything spooky going on at the house. However, she did mention that her mom had seen some things at my house, with one being a little boy disappearing by the side of the house. I'd never seen a little boy or felt the presence of one, so I'm not sure if it was true or not. One day, they decided to move out and another family moved in, but for a short period of time since the house ended up being too large for the woman and her kids, and she decided to downsize and move into the house behind the house in question. This was a 2-home lot owned by the same landlord. During this lady's move, my other friend that lived next door to me and her family decided to move over to the one across from me. Now that I was older, My parents didn't care if I hung out over at their place, so I helped them move and practically existed over there all the time after school. Prior to the main story, there had been times that things seemed off in the house. I once babysat my friend's baby brother, and there would be noises coming from the kitchen and hallway, but I thought it was their cat messing around. On another occasion, I was hanging out with her and her brother that was around her age. I was on my laptop, sitting on their couch, and they had gone into the kitchen. Shortly afterwards, out of my peripheral vision, I thought I saw her brother come back and was there standing facing me in the hallway in front of the bathroom. But when I asked him a question and he didn't answer, and I turned my head, there was no one there. Anyway, it was the 4th of July, not sure what year. I was around 18 or 19 years old and my friend was 15 or 16. Her family was going to watch fireworks at the San Manuel Stadium. She didn't want to go and decided to stay and hang out with me and my parents since we were going to have a little cookout. After we ate, we sat out on the curb and watched the neighbors lighting fireworks, and shortly after, she went over to her house. I don't remember for what. But when she tried to get in, the door was locked. What was strange about it was that her family never locked the door, and no one was home. Plus, they knew she was staying behind and they also had their dog there, so she needed access in order to let the dog out to go potty and stuff. And after a while, we decided to check if any of the windows were open so she could get inside. I was hesitant just in case someone might have snuck in like a burglar or crackhead, but we ended up finding a bat just in case. Luckily, her mom's window was unlocked, and with a boost, I was able to get her through the window. I met her at the door, and when she came out, she said that it was strange that the deadbolt was locked. Her parents didn't even have a key to the deadbolt, only the bottom doorknob, so there wouldn't have been a way for them to lock it from the outside. We did a quick search, and no one was in the house, only the cat and the dog, with the dog looking visibly nervous. When her parents came back home, we asked them about the door, and they confirmed that they didn't lock it, but chalked it up to maybe it flipping over on its own. A couple of days later, my friend, the one who originally lived in the house, came to visit and hang out. The three of us were catching up on what was going on and began telling her about what had happened. But before we could finish, she said, "The deadbolt was locked, wasn't it?" I was shocked, and she said that it happened all the time when she lived there, and that there was always some type of poltergeist activity going on, like the radio and TVs turning on their own. She also confirmed the shadow figure in the hallway and even said that she once saw a woman in a sun hat through the window sitting on the porch while she was laying on the couch. I asked her why she never said anything about it, and she said that when she would tell her mom, she wouldn't believe her and said it was just her imagination. Well, we were relieved that we had confirmed her experiences. It's been years since I've moved, so I'm not really sure if the house is still active. My friend's family still lives there, but all the kids have moved out apart from the youngest one that I used to babysit. I'm no longer as close to them, but I still talk to them when I visit my folks. Hey gang, thanks for listening to this episode. If you have a true scary story of any nature that you'd like me to narrate, email it to unclejosh.truescarystories@gmail.com. I read them all. If you're catching this episode on YouTube and you like what you've heard and seen, why don't you give it a thumbs up, leave a comment below, I'd love to know what you thought of the stories, and become a subscriber if you're not already one. Maybe even tell a friend about the channel. I'd appreciate all of that stuff. If you'd like to take your support of what I'm doing a step further, find a link to my Patreon page in the description, and consider purchasing some Uncle Josh and Campfire Crew merchandise. There's a link to my TeePublic storefront down there, and not all the designs are of the paranormal, the weird, and the strange. Go check it out, more designs are on the way. And also be on the lookout for a new Dasher store. It's a subsidiary of TeePublic. Everyone, be excellent to each other, and until next time, be wary of things that go bump in the night. It could be anything. A ghost, a monster, or the guy next door.